Sati, you spend more time on Reddit than anybody I know. How long have you been a Reddit person?
Like, since I can remember. I don't even know when I was on. I mean, so long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you like about Reddit?
I love Reddit because for two reasons. On the personal side, you can get detailed information about any weird topic that you're into, and I'm into a lot of weird topics. Mm-hmm. And so it's just such a wonderful font of information on like all of the obscure things that interest me.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I love professionally is that as a marketer, it is so valuable to hear how people really talk about things in a very unfiltered way. Mm-hmm. Like, give me your real opinion on this. And so there have definitely been a lot of gems around people's mindset around fitness, people's assumptions about training mm-hmm. that have been very valuable for me to just be like, oh yeah, like I didn't even realize people were talking about it that way. Like we could definitely make some content to address that or use this language in our copy or all kinds of things like that.
Kind of like what we're going to do today.
Kind of like what we're going to do today.
Yeah. What was the thread that you were in this morning that got you inspired for what we're talking about?
Yeah. As soon as I saw this, I was like, oh, I got to send this to Marcus because it was so great. It was a thread on the women's fitness section of Reddit, mm-hmm. which is called XX Fitness, as in chromosomes. Mm-hmm. And it was on basically fitness myths that people have fallen for or gotten wise to, that they were just kind of doing everything wrong in their fitness journey as women and then figured out, oh, this is how this really works.
Yes. So that's what we're going to try and we're going to address some of them. We're not mm-hmm. like debunking myths because these are myths that were presented on this thread as like, this is BS anyway. So, mm-hmm. But maybe we can just bring those to light. And I think it's important that anybody listening today is aware that like, these are myths that it doesn't matter, you know, your sex, your gender, how you identify, like this hits everybody, you know, for the most part. We might get into something about, mm-hmm. you know, menstrual cycles, but which, you know, is probably not something commonly shared amongst all the species, you know, the entire human species, but for the most part it is. And then, and even, you know, particularly around the topic of, you know, menstruation and training in menstruation and your period, this is like just good, valuable information for everybody because everybody's got some women in their life or they encounter women and or they're a woman that has a period. So, mm-hmm. Good to have this, you know, conversation. So just everybody tune in, stay to the end. There's lots of good, juicy information coming in this podcast.
Yes. Even though we're going to talk about periods. Yeah. But yeah, definitely a good topic to get educated on. But yeah, maybe we could start with a myth that is common for a lot of people, most likely.
Okay, great. And you have the list with you, which I think we should reference, but what's the one that jumps out first to you?
The one that jumped out first was actually voted to the top of the list, which was basically that people felt scammed by the supplement industry.
Wow.
Yeah. And the one that someone mentioned was like, you know, the things that ultimately work for me are creatine and protein. And I wasted so much money on all of these other things because I thought that they would help me gain muscle.
Sure. Yeah. Well, which is becoming more and more clear. Like it's just like a very common stance that now a lot of like the science-based, you know, fitness community is taking. It's like there's really like 3, maybe 4 supplements that have like that top tier grade of like, this works, it's reasonably priced, and there's really no downside whatsoever. So go ahead and take it. Mm-hmm. And then there's, you know, there's a lot of like emerging supplements or supplements that just really have no efficacy, which kind of fall at the bottom of the list, which are like, don't waste your money on that. But those are often the supplements that have the highest margin. Yes. Because when there's something that's emerging, something that's new, you know, there's like less competition. And so a company can drive up the price on it. You know, for example, I mean, not that this supplement falls into this category. Matter of fact, this is a top tier supplement, creatine. But like, decades ago when creatine wasn't as commonly used, and it was just like this emerging sports performance thing, there's only a handful of companies that had it, and they're like, hey, we've got this proprietary thing and we're charging $70 for 10 servings, and it's like, and it's working, and people are like, let's get that. Fast forward to today, every supplement company, every bulk supplement company, every provider out there, I mean, you can go into Safeway and Target and you can get you can go anywhere and get creatine. So there's massive competition for this one product, which drives prices lower and lower and lower, which means the margins get really, really thin for these companies, and they're not really making a lot of money off of it. They're going to make more money off of other, newer products, which have less research done on them. They have less, there's less of a track record to be like, are these safe? Are they effective? Maybe they haven't had 500 plus studies done on them like creatine has. They've had 2, and one seemed pretty like, there was some potential benefit here. Yeah. It seems promising, whereas the other didn't seem so promising. So it's like 50% of the research out there says this is great. It's like, well, there's only 2 studies, whereas like with creatine, it's like 99.9% of the studies say it's great. There's been thousands, and the 0.01% was like just a poorly done study kind of thing.
Yes.
And yeah, it's absolutely it's such a hard one to navigate, because there's a lot of money to be made in supplements for sure. The supplement industry is extremely lucrative, and it's not only lucrative for the companies that are making the supplements, if they can break through and become one of the, the key players in the business, but it's also lucrative for the influencers and for the, the people that are kind of like selling or maybe ambassadors or promoting products further down the sales chain.
Yeah. I think it's helpful to understand what goes on in these industries as you're a consumer trying to make these decisions. And the other thing I can say from the marketing angle is that people are always looking for a way to get results faster and to get an edge and to get more. And there's something that feels very productive about purchasing a supplement and starting to take it. And at the same time, there is something really valuable about a placebo effect of like that daily time of day when you're like, I am doing something good for my health. I am doing something good for my body. But my suggestion is just to like, I don't know, get like a little multivitamin that's not expensive and have that be your like, or just take the protein and creatine. Those are the 2 things that work.
A couple of things that I'll say is that, over the years, I've had access to a lot of supplements, some that I paid for, lots that were given to me for free. When things are given to me for free, I'm more inclined to take more different stuff, because I'm like, well, I'm not paying for it. But like when when it's like comes to having to pay full retail or go out and buy something, it's like, okay, my list of like, these are the supplements that I actually will take gets shorter and shorter and shorter. And there are really 2 different categories of supplements that I think about. There's sort of the performance supplements, which is really, I don't know, probably what this thread was about. It's like, this is going to get me more muscle. This is going to get me leaner. This is like all these things it's going to promise. And from a performance standpoint, there's really a select few, taking protein, taking creatine, using caffeine. Those are kind of your top tier supplements. Yeah. There's sort of a second tier, which might include things like citrulline malate and beta alanine, which you find in pre-workouts. You also find like tyrosine and some other like nootropics or things that kind of are cognitive enhancers, get your brain going. Those can certainly have an impact. Are they going to have a 5% or even a 2% impact on your performance gains? Likely not, but they often come prepackaged in, a pre-workout with creatine perhaps. Yeah. And so therefore it's a decent value and you can get it. And that's also one of those things that like when people take their pre-workout that's got some of these supplements in it, it really can like get them locked in on like, okay, now it's time to go train. Like I'm focused. It's got a little caffeine. It's got the creatine in it. It's got, whatever. It's got your supplements that some that work, some that are okay, but it has not a placebo effect. It's a real effect, but it also has sort of that, it's that time of day. It's that time to go. And I'm in the zone. Some people, when they just like literally taste their pre-workout, because it's the same one that they have, caffeine is going to take 40 minutes to get into its like highest concentration in your bloodstream. Within 5 minutes, they're like, yeah, I'm vibing. I'm like, not because of your caffeine and not because of your pre-workout. They take their sips of their pre-workout and they get the tingles from the beta alanine. The beta alanine tingles are 100% not a sign of efficacy.
Right.
That's actually not, it's like totally unrelated to the, effective nature of the supplement. And again, and also beta alanine doesn't have like an acute effect, meaning like you don't take it now and it works like within 30 minutes.
Right.
It's like creatine. It just builds up in your system. So, but people feel that and they're like, okay, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go, which is fine. That's real. Like just like turning on a great song at the beginning of the workout, you're like, hell yeah, I'm fired up. So I don't fault people for doing that, but certainly getting, talked into, buying the new like herb extract that costs $3 a serving. Yeah. And you're taking it every day. It's like, well, that adds up. It's $90 a month. And it's like, did it really? So the other category of supplements is like, I call them like foundational health or general health supplements. That's like your multivitamins, that's vitamin D, that's some fish oil. And those are really there to complement a good diet. And so, if you're looking to not spend a lot of money, you start with just making good dietary choices. And again, those are sort of like, okay, I have a little bit of extra disposable income. I want to ensure that I'm rounding out all my micronutrients that I need. Or if you get blood work and it says, hey, you're low on vitamin D, then you should supplement it because that's a supplement that has a lot of proven benefit. Or at least it's a compound that we make in our body that if you're low on and you supplement it, it can have a dramatic impact. Same thing with like omega-3 fatty acids from fish oil too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to tack on another scam that people mentioned that they got wise to, which is this whole category of things that are marketed to women to put pressure on us to purchase them to look better. And I feel like, I don't know if men feel the same amount of pressure, but there are so many items that women are aware of that I feel like is a whole other layer to this, which people mention specifically flat tummy tea, waist trainers. Someone mentioned the apple cider vinegar shots, but there's sort of a whole category of like health and wellness type supplements, devices, nutrition things, smoothies like that get marketed to women specifically to help us with
slimming,
beauty, slimming, wellness, bloating,
detoxing.
Yes. And, it's sort of this whole layer of expectation that we should be looking a certain way and feeling better than we do. And
and it's like, and it's interesting because I don't know, what I'm picturing right now is sort of a wellness model that is like going to be used to like help sell the detox like juice. And that fitness model looks terrific, right? Or looks a particular way that is like, objectively or like stereotypically beautiful in some way. And that fitness model actually probably is like lifting weights, taking protein and creatine and like doing the thing, but they're like plastered on an ad for like, the green juice, like with apple cider vinegar mixed in. And if you take this combination, it's going to like help you trim your waist. And like that person's not taking that, but there's like this culture or this sort of like feeling amongst, women who are seeing it's like, oh, like this is how you achieve that. We're going to achieve it through these types, but we don't achieve it through this like the general hard work of like lifting weights and, eating protein and, this other thing that we know is actually what helps everybody move the needle on changing their health in their bodies.
Yeah. And that kind of leads us into the menstrual cycle one, which is that there is a message out there that women should be modifying their training and pulling back on certain days of their period and resting, taking more rest days around their period at certain times, and basically adapting their training to fit their menstrual cycle. And this is one that I am not a fan of personally. And now, we were talking about this before we started recording, and I mentioned that there's nothing wrong with learning how to take in the messages that your body is giving you and knowing, okay, today I don't feel like I can push to the max. Today I may actually need to take a rest day and recover. Today I'm feeling fine. I can push it. Like knowing that we have days when we're going to perform well and days when we don't perform well. I feel like that goes for every single person. But the reason that I object to this one specifically is that the subtext that I take in is not that it's helping me be a better athlete or be healthier, but that there is something about my menstrual cycle that makes me weaker or less capable and have to adapt. And the second thing about it is that my menstrual cycle is very irregular. And so if I actually followed this advice and pulled back on certain days of my cycle, I would end up training like 3 days a month, like it would just be all over the place. So I don't believe there is any real research around this. If there is out there, if someone has some, I would like to take a look at it and learn. I have not found any yet, but I'm curious about your take on this as well for your female clients and what you know about.
I kind of defer to you on this because I'm like, well, tell me what frustrates you about it. And certainly any blanket recommendation that's out there, it's about how each person's body is responding to this very like complex and individual like experience. Like each person, every woman that I have, talked to about their menstrual cycle, it's no two are really alike. And so I find it hard to believe that there's like, hey, this is a specific prescription that you should follow around training. I do think though that it's useful to like look at your own monthly rhythms and cycles and how your training is impacted. Same thing with clients who are in a fat loss, they're going through a fat loss period where they're trying to be in a caloric deficit, they're trying to lose weight, and their body weight swells or goes up right before their period when they're maybe retaining more water or something like that. And they haven't made those connections. They just see the scale number go up at, day whatever in their cycle, and they're like frustrated by that. So that's how the only way I've used it with my female clients in the past is to, okay, do we see a common pattern in your training every month? If there is a common pattern and it's an obstacle or it's a barrier, then let's address it with whatever works for you.
Yeah.
If it's, I tweak my back every month, it's like around the same time, it's like, it's happened 3 months in a row. Like, okay, we draw this connection. You know what? Let's not do cleans on this week. Let's skip that. Or, hey, your weight has gone up 2 months in a row around the same time. Now you can, we have a conversation about it. Now you can anticipate it and you don't get so depressed or down about that, which can be this trigger that causes them to eat more or, say, fuck it, I'm not going to follow the deficit diet anymore. Right. And if with knowledge or with like an understanding of how these cycles are happening, maybe they're like, oh, I just got to stick with the plan, and that's totally normal. And it doesn't, it shouldn't deter me from what I'm doing or make me discouraged.
Absolutely. And this is one instance where tracking your own data can be so helpful because I tracked my data on my Whoop for a long period of time when I was recording, this is the day I started my period, this is my training, here's my recovery, here's my sleep. And what was actually surprising to me was that it gives you a report of the things that are impacting your recovery. And it basically showed me that the first couple days of my period were actually some of my best recoveries.
Okay.
And I would not know that from how I felt. My body on my first couple days of my period feels like ass. Like, it's horrible.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, I have an attitude of just trying to keep my training as consistent as possible. And if I need to pull back, sure, I do. But if I just go into it and once I get started and I'm warmed up and I'm just hitting my weights, I'm in the flow of it, I'm not really thinking about it that much. And it turns out I can push just fine and still make progress and probably make even more progress, even though in my brain, there's a different situation going on.
Yep.
So it concerns me that there's this message sometimes for women that you should be delicate and pulling back, and it's sort of couched in this like self-care talk. But if you actually look at the reality of it, it's not always that way. And my concern is that women are told more often that we should be more feminine and more delicate and not so hardcore rather than, the opposite, which I think is more helpful sometimes, which is that you're okay. Like, you're safe. You can push. You can actually train hard and reap the benefits from that.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Well, is there another one on the list?
Yes. Let me grab the list. Then, there are some, obviously the ones about cardio. It's like endless messages around cardio. Go for a run. If you want to lose weight, you have to do endless cardio. You have to do the elliptical, all of that. I think that we cover that a lot. But the one I wanted to mention was around that someone realized like, oh, if I am eating in a deficit, I am probably not going to build a butt. Like that actually takes many years of work sometimes to build a really big, robust booty. And it also takes actually eating some food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the comment you had said was like, it's, like to put on muscle, put on like pounds of muscle, like you're not likely going to achieve that if you're in a caloric deficit.
Right. And it's not going to happen super fast necessarily either. Like,
there was 3 months I probably am not going to build a big butt.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's something that with different messaging and for different reasons definitely like hits the male audience too. I think what's hard is that and how I relate to this too, is that the image of male and female, physique on social media is often like portrayed as like people being really lean. And really lean individuals, are generally, and posting those pictures of themselves when they're very lean, it's like that's generally when they're in a peak cut phase, and they're really only in that really lean state for, a few weeks out of the year. The rest of the time they're in, moderate body fat ranges, moderate for athletic moderate, which is still looks, lean and certainly not overweight, but they carry more body fat because that is the optimal range for them to build muscle. And that's generally not in a caloric deficit. That's, eating at maintenance or eating in a slight surplus for a period of time. So I think a lot of people see, like, oh, I want to have abs. I want to be ripped. I got to lose some body fat to do that. But I also want to build muscle. And so there's this like constant tug of like, I got to be lean. I got to be lean. I got to eat less. I got to cut weight. And it's just not setting people up for good muscle growth over time.
Yeah.
And I've fallen victim to that too. Like that was, kind of a big portion of the last few years for me is that I just sort of played that side of the spectrum too much, the cutting, staying too lean. And anyway, it takes, and then on top of that, once you actually get into a caloric maintenance or caloric surplus, muscle comes slowly. You know, if you want to build muscle and if you've been training for more than 2-3 years, you know, to gain more than like half a pound of muscle a month is like fast.
Right.
So it's like, okay, well, you know, if I'm going to add a pound of muscle to my butt, you know, you don't just add muscle to your butt, you add muscle other places too, you know? And so like, okay, that's going to take months and months and months. And is a pound of muscle to my butt going to make me go from, you know, having a flat backside to having this big bubble? Like, no, you're going to have to do a little bit more than that. Probably
you have to do a lot.
Yeah. It's going to take time. It's going to take years. And then if you're like, okay, it's going to take years, but all those years you're just like constantly trying to deprive yourself of food, like then it's going to take decades because you're never going to get there like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that kind of leads into, you know, there have been other mentions in this thread about fitness influencers, and there's some mention of like, I think a lot of them might be on steroids, and a lot of men are on steroids. And I think just generally speaking, it's always helpful to note that what you see on the internet is not reality.
Yeah.
Like, it's not gonna happen fast. It's not gonna happen with a 6-minute workout on YouTube. It's not gonna happen overnight. Like, these are just sort of the things that take time. And that's something that I loved that someone said in their comment, which was that I didn't realize that I don't actually have to do everything perfectly. And I can just do the main things that work and like not have to sweat eating a dessert or eating a carb or, you know, and I just think that there's this underlying sense that a lot of women feel, and I'm sure a lot of men who are in fitness feel as well, but there's this always undercurrent of you're not doing it right or you're not doing it perfect. And then I think some people get caught in a trap of an all or nothing mentality. And they're like, well, it's like, if I can't take the supplement and have the perfect workout outfit and have the body that is socially acceptable and train around my period and train hard, but not too hard, and build muscle, but not too much muscle, it's like, well, why am I even bothering?
You know, being able to like talk about all these variables that you need to get right in order to make progress, that's what gives people the ammunition to go out and sell stuff. It's like, hey, you're not doing this other thing that could really optimize your results, and you're not doing this thing that could really change the game. And it's like, oh my gosh, there's a list of 20 things that I need to do to make this actually work. Geez, it's a lot. You know, it's like, well, it's not really true. You know, you got about a list of 5 things you got to really, really get right. It's like, eat your protein, generally hit your calories, lift weights hard, you know, walk around, you know, get a little cardio in and sleep, you know, and that's generally it. And if you have a dessert, that doesn't really blow anything out of the water, right? And if you like miss one lift, it's like, that's okay. Yeah. If you only get 6 hours of sleep tonight, you're not going to like ruin all your progress. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
The steroid comment too also is interesting to me because it is like, I used to be someone who was like, gosh, I just really didn't like people talking about, like, it just seemed like everyone was just jaded about steroids.
Yeah.
And I think there's still some of that out there, which unfortunately it's like people see that and they're like, well, none of this is possible. None of this is achievable. So I'm not even going to really try. And I think it's, that part of it really bothers me because I just don't want people to limit what they believe is possible in themselves. I know how much I've been able to achieve natural. I know a lot of other, you know, people who I trust and believe are natural too, and how much they've been able to achieve. And these are not necessarily people that have like the perfect genetics or, right? They're generally just putting in hard work for long periods of time.
Absolutely.
And then the other part about like the portrayal of leanness. And I've been wanting to talk about this in some way, but you know, Sam Sulek is this it's like the world's fastest growing fitness YouTuber. He is just this phenom that everyone is paying attention to. And what I really have appreciated about him, and he's somebody who's definitely using steroids, but is that he is, always talking about bulking and getting bigger and trying to put on muscle. And he's always talking too about like, stop being so concerned with being shredded. Like, put on a little bit of size. Like, everyone, it's okay to not have like abs 24/7, 365. And I kind of like, I see him as like doing something really positive in the fitness community, because now there's a lot of men out there who are, my hope is not that they see him, they're like, okay, if I want to be like Sam Sulek, I got to take steroids. But it's like, oh, like Sam, he titles every one of his videos, his daily vlogs, as like, spring bulk day 172 or whatever. Like, he's been bulking for like 5 months. Like, he's not like bulk for 2 weeks and then I'm going to go on a cut. He does a cut periodically, but I went through his page and I was like, okay, his bulk was 150 something days. His cut was like 60 days. It's like, so he bulks for a extended period of time because it takes time for your body to build muscle and to like get into the progressions and to have enough energy to like lay down new muscle tissue. And yeah, you put on a little body fat, but like nobody's looking at him and being like, oh, he's fat. They're looking at him like, oh, he's got a lot of muscle. And then he does a cut for a shorter period of time. And it's like going back to the question of like, I'm not going to build a butt, in 3 months on a calorie deficit. It's like, no, you're not, and it's cool to like put on some weight and to lift heavy and lift hard and do it for 5, 6, 12 months at a time. And then, yeah, you can, if you want to at some point, diet down and, lean out a little bit to show off your muscles a little bit more, go for it. But it's more like we're seeing more examples of people like, hey, it's acceptable to like be in a bulk, like to put on some weight and to like fuel yourself enough so that you can go in and really hit the gym hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have a closing thought, which is that I think that when you're in the fitness space at all, there's a lot of pressure. And when you're a female, there's a whole other set of pressures that come with it to look a certain way, be a certain way, behave a certain way, all of the things. And so this is just a shout out to everyone out there who is, first of all, trying their best, but also second of all, finding something in the process for you, that really gives you joy. And one of my favorite threads in the XX Fitness Reddit of all time was a woman who posted that her goal was to be able to do the worm and she wanted training suggestions. So
I love that.
I love that, people are finding something that just lights them up. And it's like, yeah, I want to get into the gym. I want to get my mobility and my strength and eat right because I got to be able to do the worm.
Hell yes. Hell yes.
Yeah.
So on that note, everyone jump into the Reddit threads, go and find some people that you connect with, find something that's interesting to you, investigate really random, strange things like Satya, and maybe we'll actually start to include that in the newsletter. It's like Satya's Reddit thread
random Reddit obsession.
Yeah, I love it.
Oh, you do not want to know.
If you have random Reddit obsessions that you are into, please DM us. We'd love to know what those are.
I would actually.
Yes. All right. We'll see you guys next time.
See ya.